Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the FGCU AI Summer Academy and for registering for this webinar. Uh, so the webinar today, before I talk about the webinar, let me first introduce myself. So my name is Ahmed Ilshad, and I will be joined in this presentation with Michael Ver, and we are both affiliated to the Whitaker College of Engineering at FGCU, and I have a joint appointment at the Water School. So, uh, and also I have an affiliation with Dentric. So this part of the work is also related to the AI human center initiative or like a mission of Dentric. So the webinar today would be more like interactive style. So please, like I will be presenting the material, but just please feel free just to stop me and ask question. As like they arise, yes, so like don't wait until the end like to ask a question. Like if you have question uh, just just let me know. And the talk, yes, the talk today is like about like human-centered AI for South Florida water. So and the idea of human centered is that this artificial intelligence, they should not be only viewed as like way to build like more accurate algorithm, but it's more as like a tools like that will help like people to interact with this like complex data and understand like the data uncertainty and like make a better and informed decisions. That would be like the main idea of this like human centered, and as I will be emphasizing and showing through this talk. And South Florida, that would be like a very good setting for implementing this AI human-centered because our water system are deeply like connected and influenced by like climate, by ecosystem, public health, infrastructure, community well-being. All these things, as I will be showing like in the examples that I will be showing today. So today I will be showing two examples, one about like water quality in relation to harmful algae bloom, and another one about groundwater climate resiliency, and basically showing like the interconnectedness of these systems, and how AI, like a human-centered AI, like tools could help to better understand and make a decision, like make some informed decision about these systems. Uh, but again, as I mentioned, like the broad question for today would be like how AI support like water decision, like while keeping like the people, like the uncertainty and the responsible use of AI, like keeping this at the center, basically. So that's basically yes, the agenda for today. So any question before I move forward? Yeah, any question? Okay. Uh, I think we just have two in the waiting room. I'm just like admitting the ones in the waiting room. Uh, okay. Human-centered AI for South Florida water, so basically, South Florida, as I mentioned, like with respect, like the South Florida waters, these are very interesting system, and we have like a lot of interesting water issues or water problems that AI would be like could offer a plausible solution and plausible like information that we cannot really get with our like traditional like tools such as like process-based models. And I will show you this. So I will show you like for example like for harmful algae plume, how we started like modeling these harmful algae plume and with like a traditional like process-based model, and how we find that the machine learning for example would be like a much easier or a much plausible like modeling option like for to understand like these system for different prediction purposes. Yes. So I'll be talking like today a lot about like water quality, particularly like harmful algae plume, both like marine or harmful algae plume like red tides, and also like freshwater like system like blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. Uh, in addition, like or part of water quality is salinity, and salinity that's due to like from salt water intrusion, as that could happen for several reasons. Part of it would be like sea level rise, but part of it would be over pumping. So that's be also like is among the plausible like or the causes for salinity. And then we have like flooding. We have also flooding due to all sorts of reasons. That would be like sea level rise, which could make flooding worse at the coastal area, but that could be also due to tides, like king tides, for example, like regular tides and like other tides that would be special to this area, like king tides, where you will find something like a sunny day flooding. Yes, and we are expecting more of this, like a king tide, to come like within like the next like year. So that would be like an example of flooding. But we also have something which we call like a groundwater flooding or like groundwater rise. We have very shallow groundwater systems that you just like your groundwater system could cause the flooding. But interestingly enough, in Florida or in South Florida, we could have like the problem and the opposite. Like, so we can have like groundwater, like it could be like we could have a flooding issue, but in other parts we could also like have a drought issue. Uh, and as I will show you, like in all, like these are just some of the common problems that we have here, like in South Florida. And as I will be showing you in this talk, that the AI could like help with these problems, and I will show you like how AI could like help with these problems, and including like opportunities, strengths, and limitations also, not just like opportunity, but also like strengths, because that's part of like the human-centered AI, is that we also discuss and communicate uncertainty for the benefit of humans. So I will start like going from something like very general to something like very specific. So I will start from like environmental data science, like how we turn like water, or more generally speaking, environmental data into insight. So I will talk like give like red tide example, how we do this, and how we can use these insights to build like an artificial intelligence model. Like, so our artificial intelligence models, that would be like a model that would support decision. One type of artificial intelligence model would be like machine learning. So I will show that how we building on the how we process the data and the insight we gain from the data, and the hypothesis that we can test with this data, how we can develop like a machine learning model for different purposes, like early warning system, for example, for red tide, or for screening for like a blue-green algae or cyanobacteria, or for understanding the long-term like future impact of red tide. That's like projecting like a red tide under different like future climate scenarios, for example. Yeah, so these are would be like different purposes. And then I will move from machine learning to something more specific, deep learning, which is like a specialized form of machine learning. So that's like machine learning with multiple layers. So you have like a neural network, an artificial neural network with multiple layers. So you can do like encoding at with different layers. So I will show the deep learning for the cyanobacteria example, like the blue-green algae for screening for this. And then that would be the part one of this presentation. In part two, I will show like even more, one more specialized variant of deep learning, which is generative AI. And I will show you how this generative AI could be very useful in communicating data and information and making this data and information that was not accessible for the general public or like the common user data that like were only accessible for very technical users. That's like, for example, NetCDF data, GIS data, and these type of data that you require, like, for example, like GIS skills, or like you require Python, like skill specialized in even Python skill, like to access this type of data, how we can with generative AI, how we can make like this data from like gigabytes of data from our models, like accessible for anyone. And basically you can just like ask question in English, yes, in plain like English, and the generative AI will access the model data and provide you like the answers for your question. So basically that's so, and this part two that would be mainly led by this part two that would be mainly led by Michael Hilfer. Yeah. So that's basically like the outline for what we will be doing today. So any question before I move forward? Yeah, please feel free to just like stop and ask me question. Yes, just like to make this a little bit more interactive. Yeah. So any question before I move forward? Yeah, you're all good. Okay, so the human center again, like just let me recap, like the human center, it asks who will use this data, who will is getting affected by this data, and like what remains uncertain. And I will talk more like about uncertainty and like how to communicate like this uncertainty. That's like basically the human centered part. But before we start, I would like to make like a few acknowledgments. So I will be presenting like two projects, basically like results like from two projects. One project is like funded by NSF, and in that project we try to understand we try to develop like an early warning system and future projection for red tide, and understand particularly its impact on human health, like respiratory illnesses and other illnesses. And for this project, I would basically be presenting like the work of Matthew Dodds, who is undergraduate like civil engineering here at the Whitaker College of Engineering. I will be presenting his work in developing like this early warning system for red tide, considering like different like red tide driver. I will be also presenting the work of group of Vector and Planco. So this was part of their senior design project for their software in software engineering. Who basically build on the work of Matthew, and characterize it like the uncertainty of this early warning system, and provide more insight. I will also be presenting like the second case study, which is the blue-green algae blue-green algae like screening, and that's the work of Nathan, and he's a graduate student at the water school. Yeah. Uh, Let me just remove this part. So that's the first project. Like the second project is funded by the EPA, and I will briefly talk about the project and introduce like the project, and then we'll give the floor to Michael. So here's this is the group. So that was also part of their software engineering graduation project at like the Whitaker College of Engineering. So I have Michael, this Michael, and he's joining us today. Louise, Mark, and Christopher. And here they will like presenting their poster at the South Florida Water Resources Conference, and actually they won an award. They won like a best like a poster award, like they were like in the third place, yeah, for that. And I would also like to acknowledge Mocha, who's like my postdoc, and he is basically like the engine of this project, and he's what was who like provided like the data like that you will see here, where Mike and his group uh, was able to get this data and make it like accessible like through like an interface, which Mike will be presenting something to like ChatGPT. So we have like a ChatGPT interface where you can queries you like this mega or megabytes of different data related to surface water and groundwater, historic and future data under different scenario, and like get answers to your questions like that you have. Okay, so without further ado, like let me just like any questions so far before I move on? Okay. So without further ado, let me just like yeah like start like to introduce like our first like case study, which is about red tide. So does anybody here in this like meeting or in this call does not know like what is like red tides, or would like to learn more about red tides? Any response? No? Let me see. Okay, so I am getting any. Okay. Let's see, where is, let me see. Okay. Yeah, so please, yes, like if yeah, just feel free like to ask a question, yes, or to uh, Shimon, yes, and discuss. Yeah. So basically, like red tide, these are harmful algae plume that occurs like worldwide, specifically like a marine harmful algae plume. In Florida here, like these red tides, they occur like due to the increase of the concentration of Carenia brevis. So Carenia brevis, this is a single cell, like a marine fulgulate, which is basically just like yeah, just like a single cell like organism. Yes, a single cell algae. And more importantly, like this Carenia brevis, what they do is that they will produce like a potent neurotoxin, and these neurotoxins they are collectively called like privy toxins. Yeah, and that's why we are concerned about red tide because this privy toxins they can cause like stomach and neurological problems for like marine organism like seabirds and human, like in human for example, like they could cause respiratory illnesses, but they can also cause like other illnesses, as we are also like discovering like in our project, and I will talk about this like later. uh, but and you can see like I mean you can already see in the image like so this privy toxin is not gonna also smell bad, but it will also look bad, and that will affect the like things like tourism, for example. You don't want to spend your vacation where you will end up with like respiratory illnesses, it smells bad, and I mean, it doesn't look very scenic. Yeah. Uh, and other and also you could get like it could also like cause like shellfish poisonings. That's also another thing. You can get also like by eating shellfish, you can get shellfish poisoning, and but it affects fisheries. So that's like also it's not like part of. In addition to tourism, it affects like the economy through, for example, things like fishery, like where it be like no, like no fishing like activities. Yeah. So what causes the red tide? Yeah. What causes the red tide? The exact factor that would like cause the red tide, they are not very well understood because this Carenia brevis, like this algae, they are kind of an interesting species. They are interesting organism because they are mesotrophic. So mesotrophic means that they can both assimilate like inorganic and organic carbon. Inorganic carbon, like similar to plants, they can basically do like photosynthesis. Like similar to plants, they are autotrophic, so they can have their autotrophic mood. So if they have no nutrients available, or like no, sorry, no nutrients, like yes, no nutrients, or no like source of food available, no carbon source of food available. Yes. They can assimilate like CO2 and like make their own food like plant. But they can also they are also like heterotrophic like us. Yeah. So they can also like eat other organisms as we do. Like so, we eat plants, for example. Yeah, and we eat others than plants also. Yeah, and because of these mode together, it's like these Carenia brevis, they are not limited by nutrients, but that doesn't mean that nutrients are not important because like nutrients can be important. Uh, for like the Carenia brevis for themselves, but and more for other like phytoplankton group, like that the Carenia brevis will depend or like live in a complex ecology with. So and that's why we study like sources of nutrients like discharge from like major rivers like Peace River, for example, or Caloosahatchee River. But it's not only discharge from these watersheds, like you can also have like nutrients coming from the atmosphere, like for example like the African Saharan dust. So that's also an important driver for red tide, because African Saharan dust, which is like something like from the atmosphere, not from the land, that will supply missing micronutrients such as iron, for example, that could be important for other organisms like trichodismia, for example, where the Carenia brevis will like feed on. Okay. Uh, so and that's exactly why like the understanding like prediction of red tide or like either for like early warning system forecast system or future projection, it is like a challenging task because you have like things that are happening at a regional scale, such as discharge from major rivers, uh, like Caloosahatchee and Peace River, but you also have like this global teleconnection, like African Saharan Desert or like the Gulf Stream. So the Gulf Stream, that's also an important driver for red tide, because the Gulf Stream, what it does, it will cause what's known as loop currents. These are warm ocean currents that will loop inside the Gulf of Mexico. And guess what? That's one of the main driver of red tide for various reasons. Like so, uh, we don't know exactly. One hypothesis is that because it will cause like upwelling and provide like nutrients for like something like trichodismia or even like red tides. That's like one reason. Another reason is because like it's slow like the water movement and creates like a more calm water, and that would be like conductive for like the multiplication of red tide. But regardless of the underlying reasons, the Gulf Stream, like or the loop current, as a driver would be a driver regardless like of the exact mechanism it causes. Yes, and that's and I will show you later. That's exactly the beauty of machine learning is that you don't need to have these detailed understanding. Like all you need to do is like to do good feature engineering for your driver, like loop current, as I will show you, and then it could be like make it like meaningful for your prediction. So we were like, so this and the $1 million question actually like for this project is that we are trying to answer. So in addition, like to develop an early warning system, which would be useful for like beach advisory, for like providing like a warning, just like weather forecasts, like where you provide warning against common cold weather or heat wave, you will just also provide warning against like a red tide event that is forming or expected to form. Yeah. So in addition to this, we are also interested to know about like how like climate change will impact red tide. So in the future, like that's in the like mid-century, like end of century, and at this like time scale, like what are we expecting, like the frequency, like are we expecting to get like more red tide, are we get to like to increase in frequency, or is it, are we expecting it to increase in intensity, like get more intense events that would be like longer or wider, or are we expecting it to increase or like decrease in toxicity? So that's like the type of questions that we will be interested in, but also like how it will be moving or shifting with like a changing climate. Like is it going to move north, for example, like move more north, more from like Charlotte Harbor to more like we will start seeing more of it like in Tampa Bay area, or even more north of Florida or toward like Louisiana or Texas. So these are like the type of questions that we will basically will try to answer and will try to know. And very few studies actually have attempted to project red tide like in a changed climate. Uh, and it is a difficult task, and I will show you why this is like a difficult task, and why like machine learning could leverage on this and could be like very helpful or like useful in this regard of like projecting red tide under different like climate scenarios. So so any question before, like any question about red tide or anything about red tide before I move forward and explain like our original idea about like using an Earth system model for projecting red tide and then how we shifted to machine learning instead of like a process-based modeling. Any question? Uh, you're all good? Let's see here. So Uh, so this was like this was part of another NSF project, like not this one, but like a previous one, and like from this previous one, that's where the idea of like using this like machine learning emerged. So uh, for this part, like basically what we propose, like we said, like because like an Earth system model, so the Earth system models, that's like a very advanced form or very elaborate form of. So we had initially like a ocean circulation model, and these like ocean circulation model like developed to like general circulation model, and this general circulation model developed to climate models, and then the Earth system model, that's an advanced system of like a global climate model where it just goes beyond like having like an for example like an ocean model, an atmospheric model, and the land model. So here, like I'm just showing like an example of an Earth system model for like this is the example is for the E3SM, which is the Earth system model or the global climate model of Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So basically, like in this model, you will have like an ocean model, ocean circulation model that would be coupled to an atmospheric model. And so that's like here's the atmospheric, like E here stands for E3M atmospheric model. This is M pass like oceans as their ocean model. Here E like that will stand for E3SM land model. So you have like these coupling, and Earth system model will go beyond this by including things that will not typically see in like a global climate model, such as for example like ocean biogeochemistry, such as, for example, river nutrient and sediment transport and like river flow, such as, for example, river and ocean coupling, such as, for example, like coastal processes like waves and things like that, such as, for example, like infiltration, recharge, submarine groundwater discharge, and like how you could couple like submarine groundwater discharge to the ocean. So in addition to like the standard like land model of E3SM, you will have like this groundwater model component. So when you have a system like and in addition to where you have like this GCAM where it include like human activity interaction like with an Earth system model. So you have like this wonderful model like that with all these couplings. Then you said, okay, why don't we like use a model like this? Yeah, a process-based model like this. Yeah, so for studying something like red tide. Like so, that's like you have this impasse like biogeochemistry. You just add the Carina brevis as another functional group. Yeah. In the database of like the impasse like ocean biogeochemistry. So that was our initial idea, but and this model is run at a global scale, but you can also run it at a regional scale. So there is also like a regional Earth system model. So you can just like get your own section from this model, like so you define like some boundary condition, let's say at like the Gulf of Mexico, and you just do this simulation. You don't need to do it globally, but you can do it at like a regional scale, like at the Gulf, yeah, scale, yeah. So that's what our was our original idea. So and that this project actually it was funded in as an eager and SF proposal. Eager means like high risk, high return. High risk because you are proposing something very innovative that hasn't been done before, but high return because if you did it, that would be like you'd be like a new advancement or like a novel advancement, yeah. But we found that this is very challenging because as you see like a lot of these coupling don't already exist at the current generation of Earth system models. So this is possible, but with not with this current generation, not with like CMIP6, maybe with CMIP7 like generation of models that would be possible because you see here like for example, like river and ocean coupling, that coupling will only occur at next generation development. Submarine groundwater discharge and ocean couplings, that's the same. That's and like see this dashed line, that means that's for next like generation development and not like not this particular phase of these Earth system models. Same with this human activity. So that's a still work in progress. So maybe in 10 years from now, that research would be feasible. But but what should we do? Yeah, like uh, and that's why we introduced like this like that was like back in 2020 like where we publish like we didn't publish it to we just presented it at a conference is like how we can get like the output like because let's say like these outputs are not coupled, yes, yeah, but you can get these outputs and like put them in a machine learning model and then like do your prediction like offline, like not online. Yes, so now you can do like predictions, this prediction offline by getting these outputs, for example, from a machine learning, like and then pass it to a machine learning model and be able to do like this like prediction of red tide. So that's basically like what we introduced, like this idea, like that where we showed like the potential for this machine learning model for doing such a task. And let me show you. So as I promised to show you, I said like I will start by showing some data science, like environmental data science things. Then I will be showing like machine learning things and deep learning things, and then after deep learning, like generative AI. So let me start with showing some like environmental data science and how these like environmental data science could help you like to better like understand or like understand your data, like get insights. Like you have a data, yeah, so in that case that would be like sea surface height, which will tell you about like the loop current. So here, well, what you see here, this is like like reanalysis data. So this is historic data, like from like remote reanalysis data. That would be like based on both like observation data. So you do like in situ observation data and remote sensing data, and you combine these two, and like you create like a remote sensing data. And basically it shows like the progress of loop current like in March and in June. So here you see this is the red color, like the hot color here, that would be present like the Gulf Stream, which is still like outside like the Gulf area. That would be in March, but like starting in June, it will start to penetrate inside like the Gulf water, and then it would be looping inside the Gulf water and then exiting the Gulf water. So one of the questions that we were like, as I mentioned in this project, we were interested in Earth system model. So can Earth system model like simulate such phenomena? Can we observe this from an Earth system model? And the answer is yes. So like here, this is like an Earth system model, like a simulation for the loop current, and you see it can like simulate this like entrance of loop current in the Gulf of Mexico. But that's only for like high resolution Earth system model, which are relatively like new in like CMIP 6. So in CMIP 5, for example, these type of model didn't exist. Yeah. But in CMIP 6, we got the high resolution. So here's this is a high resolution Earth system model, and it shows that it can simulate this like regional phenomenon. So high resolutions, that would be at a resolution, for example, like of 10 kilometer or 25 kilometer or something like this. The standard like resolution of an Earth system model, that's like E3SM, for example, the one with the standard resolution, it cannot generate this regional phenomena. And the reason it cannot generate this regional phenomena, that's because like I'm not going to get into these details, but basically that's it's not just like a resolution issue, but like at the when you it's not like by just refining the grid, it's like more like you were able to incorporate more like physics or physics-based like uh, representation when you go at like this small resolution that is generally not possible at like a high resolution. So basically at like this low resolution, you can do like this eddy closure grid with like where you can actually simulate like mesoscale eddies and like these boundary currents, which you cannot generate at this. So can we use, for example, like these Earth system model, like to like learn something about like that's again this I'm not like we are not talking yet about machine learning or anything. This is just like environmental data science. Can we use like these Earth system model just to like learn something like about red tide? So and like red tide in relation to like a loop current, yes. So here this is our reanalysis data. So this is not Earth system model. Like this is just reanalysis data, just observation data. So from the observation data, we can basically like just like represent. And again, this is feature engineering. So that's how you will engineer your feature to better, so that when you use these like feature for like your machine learning prediction, you will get like more meaningful results. So our hypothesis here is that. this loop current, that is like a necessary condition for red tide to occur. And allow me to show you. So basically here we are like, so if loop current is at this position, like at the south position, is not entering into the into the Gulf water, then you will see here no plume will occur. It will always be green. So for the plume to occur, so here green means like larger plume, sorry, red means like larger plume, green means no plume. So here, like at this period, like in 1996, there was like no plume here, there was no plume here, but then there was a plume here. Yeah. And this plume will only occur like a necessary condition for this plume to occur is that like we have this loop current where like the loop current enter into like the Gulf water. So when the loop current is in this south position, it's not entering in the Gulf water, it's all green. But when it is in these north positions, that's a necessary condition. So it could be red or it could be green. So that's what we got from our reanalysis data. But can we reproduce this data like using an Earth system model? And uh, and the answer is yes. Like so, for example, like we were able to see the loop current ratio from like the reanalysis data. We was able to see very similar loop current like south ratio with our like Earth system model data. Again, one might look at this and say, oh, these two are not consistent. Yes, these two will never be consistent because the Earth system model, they are like these are not models that are used like to for like early warning or for something like these. These are model that are used for long-term projection, like a decade scale or like 30 years scale or 20 years scale of projection. So what we are interested in is not actually like, so an Earth system model will not tell you, oh, like in 2044 in January, is this what will happen? Oh, it will not tell you this. It will tell you like what are future trends. So when we analyze this data, because these are free running models, that's what we call them. These are free running model, not like an actual like forecast models. They will just give you. So what we when we do this model, what we care about, like, are we getting the correct trend? Are we getting the correct ratio? So that's like basically the context for understanding this model. So I will leave this here. I will leave like this environmental data science part here and this environmental data science part. I will leave this part here. And I will get back to Earth system model again when I talk more about like our project and our like the projection of respiratory illnesses. Yeah. So any question about like this environmental data science before I move forward? Any question? Yeah. No question. Okay. Yeah, I was hoping yeah to make this a little bit more interactive, but that's okay. Yes, I think it would be more fun to make this more interactive. But yes, if you don't have any questions, let's see here. Uh, yeah. So if you don't like have any questions, I will like move forward. So loop currents. This is not the like it's a main driver for red tide, but it's not like the only driver. So from environmental data science, like we learned about this trend, like we did our feature engineering, but this would be only one feature, only one driver, only one dependent variable when we try like to do like some red tide prediction. So we have like this physical forcing. So this physical forcing like would be like the loop current, for example, and wind speed and direction. So loop currents, that's only one driver. But in addition to this driver, we have also some other drivers. This like uh, sea surface height anomaly. So this is like the wind speed and direction, but like you also have like the sea surface height anomaly that will tell you about that's a proxy for loop current. And I showed you like how to do like feature engineering and like to better represent like this where represent like your input data, not just like by like represent your input data by the location of the loop current. Yeah. But other will include like other would be like sea surface temperature and the sea surface salinity. So these would be other like physical drivers. And in addition to these physical driver, you or like ocean, like so this be like more atmospheric drivers, this be more like ocean drivers. In addition to this, that's why like see that all these water system here in Florida are connected. You will have, and that's why I really like these red tide problems. Like, so originally I'm a groundwater hydrologist, but I got interested in this red tide because that's where you can see the interface of all these things, like where you can study a problem as as the interface between like the atmosphere, the ocean, and the land. Yeah. So the land contributions that would be like watershed drivers such as like Peace River or Caloosahatchee rivers. That would be like the discharge that's coming from the river, but it would be also like as a nutrient loading, like nitrogen and phosphorus. So we had our like so just as we analyzed the sea surface height data, we also analyzed the wind speed and direction data, the salinity and temperature data, the discharge data, and the nutrient data. And we have like a data of like we analyze the data about like more than 30 years of data that we analyze it. Yeah. And developed our feature. And most importantly, the most important feature would be like the Carenia brevis itself, like the Carenia brevis cell count, which is our independent variable or what we are trying to project. So here, like this would be like our feature processing. We did also some lagged predictors because some of these predictors they like the impact of these predictors they will not be it's like not one to one there will be lag so something will happen and then like nutrient will increase that doesn't mean for example that red tide will occur immediately but it could have like a lagged effect. Yeah. So we did also some of these features did some lagging and we what we tried here like random forest classifier and that is a very basic and very like not like a sophisticated like deep learning or machine learning model. That's like a very basic one. Yeah, very basic machine learning. Yeah, something. And then what we were trying to predict is like the Carenia brevis presence. And basically we are trying to define like a plume or no plume. Like, so the plume basically when the concentration, like the cell count exceeds like 100,000 cells per liter. So basically you go, you get the sample, you analyze the sample, and then if it exceed if and then you measure like the cell count and if our sample like for that week like and that period exceed like the threshold of 100,000 cells then we will identify this as a plume week. If it's below this we will identify this as a no plume week. Yeah. Because that's like this threshold that's when like the Carenia brevis could start to have like an impact. Yeah. Uh, so let's see how we're doing in time. I think I need to move a little bit forward. And then like, so you do this and then you try to do like a regional forecasting and get like some insight. We did this for like two regions, like for the Tampa Bay and for the Charlotte Harbor. Uh, so let's look at some of our results. So here, so basically like the classifier trained, like so we trained it on the weekly data from 1993 to 2018 and tested on independent data set from 2019 to 2025. And that shows like actually our model shows like a very high accuracy. So this is only when we are predicting just doing plume prediction at like the South Florida at the Charlotte Harbor, and this here where we are doing like the Charlotte Harbor, like Southwest Florida, and like a Tampa prediction, like we are accounting for plumes at like both of this region. And we knew, and let me just show you like how to read this. So basically, like that's what our model like was able to predict. So when there is like no plume. Yeah, so this is the true label and this is the predicted label. When there was no plume, our model said like 172 times that there was no plume, and only 22 times when when there was a plume, it said that there is no plume. So we got like a false like negative here. Okay. When there was a plume, our model like was able to say like 60 times that there was a plume. Yes, but it got like a when there was like no plume, it was able to say like 7 times as a plume where you get like a false positive here. So here you got like 20 false negative out of like 100 and like 92 event, and here you get like 7 false positive out of like 60 like 7 event. Yeah. But when we added like when we accounted for plume like in not only in like the Southwest Florida but also in Tampa Bay, we were able to provide like a more like balanced accuracy, like was able like to move this from like 85 to 87.5. Yeah. Other things also we learned from this, which I'm not showing here, is like also what features are important and what feature are less important. So we found that like the lag de plume, for example, that was important. We found that like loop current that was important. Wind, salinity, water temperature. Was important. So we will able to also see this. Yeah. Here, basically, this is like a measure, like what do you see here in this figure? That's like a measure, like the ORC curve. So the ORC curve basically is tell you like how the model can basically separate like red tide plume condition from non-plume condition. Uh, so a perfect model, you will get like straight one across this here. So the AUC, like your AUC score would be like once that would be like a perfect model. A random model, you will get like this blue line would be more around here, yeah, around this line. That means like your model is not really able to separate plume and non-plume event, and this is more like a random guess, yeah. So random guess would like your model will like follow like this line here. And you see our curve is very close to the top, yeah, which means that the model is doing much better than just guessing, yeah. So the curve is close to the top. Our AUC score, you see, is like 97%, yeah, 97%, which is like close to perfect, yes. The right plot, what the right plot is showing you is just like telling you like more of a practical question, like what is the probability cutoff that we should issue, that we should use like to issue like a plume prediction. And here it provided you like a cutoff like of 3.2, where like below this be no plume and above this like there would be like a plume. And like this basically will give you like the best balance between like catching a true plume and avoiding like a false alarm. Yeah. Uh, so what the work of those like math who is like a civil engineering student here in Whitaker College of Engineering, like what the importance of this work is basically shows that machine learning can forecast red tide condition. But we wanted to take like this like a step further. Like we want to show like uh, to instead of yeah like just forecasting like a plume or no plume, we want to have like a more like risk aware or uncertainty aware like early warning. So we will have like a better understanding of like what this model is actually producing and be able to have better understanding of uncertainty, like things like drift confidence and things like that. So that was again here. Before I move, like before I talk about like the uncertainty part, I just want to show you like that the role of nutrients. So you see the role of nutrients, for example, like at Peace River discharge, like when it's low, the probability of plume occurrence is low. When it's high, then it's high, but it's not like linear. It's like you see here, it reaches a plateau. Other things like phosphorus, for example, like you see this interesting thing, it's like goes up. So at low phosphorus level, it goes it's like it goes down, like the plume probability is low. At intermediate phosphorus levels, the plume probability is high, and as the phosphorus level increases, the plume probability goes low. So you see this. So it is not like it's not like it's simply like under high nutrients I will get more red dye. It's not that simple. Like there is a lot of non-linearity, which we were able like to show here. So this is joint combined like this is like a two-dimensional partial dependency showing like the Carenia previous plume probability as a function of total nitrogen and total phosphorus. So the warmer colors that indicate like higher plume probability, for example, like see here like zero point 0.5, like that's the probability, while lighter colors just like indicate low plume probability. And you see this like interesting that basically shows that this like non-linearity. So at it's not just like so like you think of this like I don't know like how to explain this in an easy way. Uh, so it's like this is like as if uh, uh, so let me first like go through the results and then maybe I can discuss it. Yeah. So what you see here when you have like high nitrogen and high phosphorus, this is where you get like a high plume probability. But you also at like these intermediate level of phosphorus, yes, and intermediate like levels of nitrogen, you also get like a high plume probability here also at this region and at this region. So red tide does not really seems to care about like nitrogen or phosphorus in isolation, but it cares more about like the combination. Like think of it as like like cooking. Nitrogen alone will not be the whole recipe. Phosphorus alone is not like the whole recipe. And it seems that like this algae doesn't like share like their cookbooks or something like this. Yeah. But again, be careful. Like this is like model like driven patterns. This is like it doesn't tell you that like the plume, this plume, like this nutrient alone will cause the plume, but it more tell you that how like these two combined together will affect the plume. Yeah. So it's not really like so. This is not like a proof of direct causation, more like just a response surface, more than a proof of like a direct causation. As I said, like we took this work further. So that's like the work of Planko, like Victor and his group, his software in engineering student group. I think I have to keep moving a little bit fast with this. So again, like we are the same environmental driver like river discharge, nutrient, salinity, and wind, but here we started to use more sophisticated like machine learning models. So instead of using like a machine learning model, we use like LSTM, which is like a deep learning model, like a neural network, which should stand for like long short-term memory, which will catch like this temporal pattern. In addition, we put like an ensemble column filter that will assimilate the environmental drivers like week by week. So basically, you'll update your driver week by week and like update your prediction state like on a weekly state. But more interestingly, you will put this Monte Carlo dropout estimate to estimate like the forecast uncertainty. So you'll get like plume probability and uncertainty. So you get like how uncertain you are. Like so that's like it's not like there'll be like a plume or no plume, but you will get like more better like a understanding of uncertainty. Yeah. Uh, so that's the results that we got, and I think for the interest of time, so to give Mike some time to present, I will go a little bit quickly over this. So basically, we tried. So this is like logistic regressions. This is a machine learning model similar to random forest. So random forest was not like the best model to use. Like logistic regressions, that's the one. Uh, that under this setting give like the best like on-site hit rate. And I will talk about like what do we mean like by on-site hit rate. The standalone LSTM, it give like a very high accuracy but less on-site hit rate. The LSTM with the data assimilation, the ensemble column filter, it still give like very high accuracy, like overall accuracy, and like better like on-site hit rate. So the on-site hit rate, so these are different like measures for, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I, like that's okay. I was trying like you can like maybe you can when you look at the recording try to pause this and try to look at this more detail. So the accuracy basically that's the percent of all weeks that were correctly classified, like whether there is a plume or no plume. So here, for example, there is a plume and it was correctly classified as a plume. Here there was no plume, it was correctly classified as no plume. Here there was like plume and then it was not correctly classified as plume, it was correctly classified as no plume. That's like accuracy, yes. Precision, that has to do more like with like predicted like plume week. So that's and recall, that's how to so for example, like here, like for precision, here, this one was like no plume, no plume. Here, correct plume prediction, like true positive, versus here, false alarm, like you get like a false positive. So basically, that's what this precision would be measuring, like the true positive and like these false alarms that you will be get. Recall, for example, like would be tell you like the missed actual plume week. So here, for example, like you missed this one, like so detected actual plume week. So we detected this plume week, we detected this plume week, we detected this plume week, but we missed this actual plume week. There was a plume week here, but we didn't detect it. On-site rate, this is an important metric, especially for this early warning system, because that tells you like when the plume will start. So it will give you ideas about like when plume will start. So the on-site detection, like so here, like this is the start of like so this was no plume and then the plume started here. It got this correct. And then no plume. And then the plume started here. It got this correct. But here, this one, it didn't get like here a plume started and it didn't know that the plume started. It started to catch later, but not exactly when the plume started. Yeah. Uh, so in that case, like the LSTM, it has like an overall like high accuracy, and like the on-site hit rate was like better than like the standalone LST. Yeah. So we can, I mean, I will go quickly over this detail as I mentioned, like the model confident like so here uncertainty rise during plume transition, like onset and decay. So you see like the highest uncertainty occurs here. That's like the highest uncertainty of the model. That's when the onset, when the plume start and when the plume decay. That's when we get like most of the wrong prediction, and that's where we get highest uncertainty. And now again, like now that start to shed more light about what we are doing. So we are not only like trying to predict this thing, but we are trying to understand like our prediction and the uncertainty of our prediction to better make informed decision and to better like improve like these model and to find ways to improve like these models, especially when you want to use it as an early warning. Yeah. Again, the model also show like one useful weak early signal, but persistence means that timing should be interpreted cautiously. So our model also, and that's very useful. Like our model, it shows like it has like a 1 week lead, so it can like, and that's useful for predicting like for early warning. So it can basically sends the plume before it starts, like 1 week or like before it starts, which is for it's not like a crystal ball, but it is more like a cautious friendly saying. Like so, it's like your model, like it is will say like, oh, something may be start to occur like next week or something like this. So and that could be useful for early warning. So, like maybe bring your inhaler, or if you are planning a wedding at the beach, maybe try to be careful. Yeah. So that is what we get from here. So I need to go very carefully because I only have 10 minutes so I can give Mike some time to present. But what I just showed you here is like just like task two of our part of task two of our like NSF project, where we are developing like this machine learning model for predicting red tide event. We try to understand like different driver and how they affect the occurrence of red tide. Our next step would be like to instead of using historic data, we would use future data from Earth system model and project like red tide into the future. So in addition to developing like weekly forecasts, like these weekly forecasts, like week by week, we will also want to understand like long-term like trends. And based on these long-term trends, we want to understand like based on early warning, we also want to produce like an early warning, particularly for uh, uh, health risk and respiratory illnesses and other illnesses and for future long-term trend, and each has its own benefits. So like uh, early like forecast one that would be for early warning advisory, long-term ones that would be for long-term planning for like expanding like health facilities or other like infrastructure required to deal with the health issue of harmful algae plume. Uh, so that's also something we are currently working on, and like basically like from these tasks like the early warning system and long-term trend, we want to put this together and develop like a public health like mitigation strategy through the integration and stakeholder engagement. And this project like this project we are doing this project in collaboration with with like a Florida State University. So here, like at Florida Gulf Coast University, like I'm the PI of this project, and there's a co-PI Mike Parson and like the water school, and he's expert in this harmful algae plume ecology and dynamics. But from the FSU, we also have our colleagues who are working on like task 3 and 4, and we will all be working on task 5. And this is like Mingye, and he's a PI at FSU. But also we have Charles Fletcher, and he's at the School of Medicine, and he has actually he is actually not just like an academic, like medical professor, but he's practitioner also. So he's a primary care doctor. Yeah, and we also have another from Naples area. We also have Mazen, who is also like a medical doctor. So we have like two medical doctors actually like working with us like as so Charlie that's like as a co-PI, and Mazen that's as no-cost collaborator. And I mean, I will like not talk further about like this like health issues, but we hopefully we will you will like see some our coming publication and learn more about like these health issue beyond respiratory illnesses as we were discussing. Okay, so I will leave this here. I will just move very quickly, yes, because I need to give some time to Mike. So, Mike, are you good? Like, how many minutes would you like to need, or how many minutes should I spend?
I think I'll probably take around like 30, maybe 35 minutes tops.
Okay, so that sounds good. Yeah, so I can go on for maybe 10 more minutes. Yeah, can I get 10 more minutes? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I'll do 10 more minutes. Yeah. Uh, so what like I will shift gear from like a red tide to like a Carenia brevis to some other very interesting, more interesting guys, which is like cyanobacteria. Yeah, so cyanobacteria, they are not as easy and nice as like red tides. These are guys are more tricky because they are old. Yeah, I mean cyanobacteria is this one of the oldest organism, like living organism on Earth. These are the one who oxygenated our Earth, yes. So they, I mean, if you got to live for billions of years, and if you got to live that long, yeah, probably you gain a lot of, camouflaging and hiding skills, and you won't be easy to be predicted, yes, or to be forecasted, and that's why, like as you see here, we're not saying like any prediction, forecasting, projection, but like we are more like just like as a screening tool, and. This here an example of this one, and here in Florida, as I mentioned, we have like this natural system, but these natural systems are also highly engineered. So, for example, like you have like this Lake Okeechobee, and from this Lake Okeechobee, like you have like these gates, and then you have these canals or this artificial like canals, and that will discharge to, for example, Caloosahatchee River estuary. Yes, and basically with this gates you can control like discharge. So you have like this highly engineered system, and that was the work of Nathan. And by the way, like this work, like the works that I presented of Doe, that was his project in like a course that I teach called like environmental data science, and this was like his project in the course in like the same course. Yeah, so and it's great that like they can like get their like course like start like something like start something like working on it like as part of their coursework, and then be able to complete it, and through like project funding will be able to complete it, and like and get some results out of it, yeah. So here, this is basically the you have like a gate like operation here, like another gate operation here, and the canal here, and then we want what we wanted to see like how this charge will affect like downstream like the appearance or like the screening like appearance or disappearance of these like blue green algae. And for this, we use like a remote sensing approach. So for we use like a remote sensing approach, like to detect like these blue green algae. We use like a discharge gate data as this gate. And then we are testing like two things. We are testing like the LSTM and the convolution LSTM. So that's like the standard like LSTM. So that basically will tell you one point at a time, like spatially blind. So spatially blind, it does, so I can like at this point, or I will see what is happening one point at a time. And I can do it at different points, yes. The CNN like LSTM, the convolution neural network, LSTM, CNN, LSTM, that will basically see the movement and the neighboring pattern. So like you have like this spatial neighborhood capture like at each time step. So at each time steps you are capturing this spatial neighborhood, and then that's how you could track like how temporal pattern like across like spatial pattern, and like you can track both the spatial and the temporal pattern like across the estuary. And and for this part, this more coincides with our understanding with our understanding of like I mean was sorry, it was like nutrient transport, because we know that like these things like these plumes, they don't only appear, these plume only advect, like they follow like a transport procedure, they advect, they disperse. So that would be more coincided. So here again, this is our results. You see here is not like a perfect like prediction as the one. We still get like the AUC score like 80%. So this is still not an random guess, but our like detection, like recall and precision are very low, especially like recall. Like so it can detect like plume event, but it fails to detect like false positive. So many alert, like many are of these are false positive. Like so the precision is like very low. So the best use for like this type of system would be like just like guide monitoring and no automatic, not automatic action, or like not any like prediction or early warning or anything like this, uh, but just like to guide like monitoring. And this results is still like almost like negative results, yeah. But this still results is still like telling, just confirming what we already know, that these things are not like easy to predict or to project as other thing, but also being like one of the, like, I mean, like when we did this, like when we did literature review, we didn't find many uh, papers like or literature about like this is specific topic, and now when we did it we understood why, because it's not easy and that require like further like research and further investigation, yeah. So let me just like wrap up. So we talked about like mainly water quality issue like harmful algae plume in relation to several environmental driver. What I will be talking about next is like groundwater, like salinity and flood and drought. So we talk about like data science and then like machine learning. Then I will show you like how generative AI could help us disseminate or like produce data about like salinity, like flooding, drought, and things like that. Yeah, things, data related to surface water, groundwater interaction. So that's the next part. So that's our second project, the EPA project, and the title of this project, Nature-Based Infrastructure for Enhancing Climate Resiliency of Groundwater Resources in South Florida. So this project like has, I only have few more minutes left as I can. It has like X, like, so basically we want to assess the climate impact on our groundwater, surface water resources in Southwest Florida. And then we want to see like how nature-based infrastructure could like mitigate some of these like impact at like a local or like a regional scale. Then we want to have a groundwater education and outreach, like make this data accessible for like because to make this data for education and outreach, you need to make it accessible. Like the student's not gonna like in the classroom run like models that takes 1 day to run to test different scenario or to get different answer. But we can run, make all these runs for them and all this scenario for them, make the data available, and that's what Mike will talk about, where like the user could test this scenario by just chatting, yeah. Just like as you chat with ChatGPT, like for example, you tell him like, what would be like the salinity at this point, under this climate scenario, and then it will give you the answer, and then it will discuss the answer with you and plot like some figure, like plot a time series or plot a map or something like this. And then yes, and then we produce like this web-based like a transform for auto sharing. That's all through collaborative modeling. So here, this is our model. I have 2 more minutes, so I can give like Mike like 35 minutes. So this is our like integrating. So like surface water here and groundwater here is integrating. So this model, like the bisect model, that's for whole South Florida, and you see like different processes that it could like simulate. So it could do like could simulate evapotranspiration. The input would be rainfall. It can simulate like surface water evaporation, groundwater pumping, tidal exchange, surface water, groundwater exchange, uh, and even like things like slough, like these types of like slough is not like it's not a river, it's not a wetland, something in between, like a moving wetland, but it's not, which is not a river, yeah. So it can basically simulate like all and some like coastal like structure flow, like stages at like canals and things like that, yeah. So what we did, like, so that's like, so this model is already developed by our like collaborator Eric Swan, and we like build on this model, like we validated this model. That's like was a work that Mocha did, like he validated this model and he started to test like different like a scenario, like climate scenario for like sea level rise, for rainfall, precipitation, and so forth. So the input of the model is this like rainfall data. So that's like the input of the model. That's what you need to provide. But the output of the model, you get like groundwater level, you get groundwater salinity, you get like surface water salinity, groundwater recharge, evapotranspiration, surface water temperature, and you see the implication of this is huge. Like, so this has like a lot of societal implication on like water resources management, like flooding, ecosystem like services, groundwater dependent ecosystem, because you have evapotranspiration, you have surface water temperature, and many other output. But there's a problem, like these output are not actually useful for the general public or for someone like who is not a technical user but like a stakeholder. Like for example, like you are like in the city of Naples and you want to learn about like salinity, or you want to learn about like groundwater recharge or groundwater level and how it will affect flooding under different climate scenario, or like what would be the rainfall patterns in Lee County or Collier County under different climate scenarios, for example. You need like specialized technical skill like in GIS and Python to be able to answer this question. And that's where the work of Mike and his group come, where they make this data like through like deep learning model, like particularly like large language model, like available to wide audience. So with that, I will like leave the floor to Mike. So Mike, you let me stop sharing, and you want like to start sharing the screen?
Yeah, I'm gonna attempt to share my screen here. Tell me if you can see it. Is it is it showing up?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Mhm. Yeah. So I think, yeah, I can see your screen now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as Dr. Alshall mentioned, my name is Michael Alvier, and I've been working on this project with him for a few months now. And just to reiterate, the purpose of this project is exploring large language models as a method for scientific data mediation for the general public, especially for a non-technical, non-science or engineer, people from a non-science or engineering background. So this was our original research group. All four of us, I should mention, are software engineers. So we were seniors. We graduated just last week. And the fact that we're all software engineers means that we didn't come into this project with any kind of prior knowledge about hydrology or environmental sciences. So we were actually uniquely qualified in that regard to understand the challenges non-science people face trying to make sense of these scientific data sets. And this was us presenting a few months ago at the Southwest Florida Water Resources Conference. So I think it's worth considering the motivation for this project before we get into some of the finer details. So, namely, the motivation is that in the environmental sciences, especially, there's an abundance of public data sets available on agency websites and as well through programmatic APIs. So, for example, you have the Copernicus Climate Data Store, which it contains global seasonal forecasts and climate projections. NASA Earth Data, which is satellite observations. You have the NOAA, National Centers for Environmental Information, which is an archive of land station records about things like temperature, um, and rain. And as well the BISEC model, which Dr. Elshaw mentioned briefly, which is a regional hydrology model. So all this data is nominally public, but it remains inaccessible to most users because it exists for the most part in these complex geospatial formats that take specialized technical skills to actually extract and to make sense of. So the result of this technical barrier is that the data never actually reaches many non-technical stakeholders who often need to make science-informed decisions that are going to impact the community's resilience to climate change. So I'll give you some examples. Consider small municipality managers. So that's leaders of small towns that might not have the same resources as a big city like Miami to hire dedicated GIS staff or to afford climate consulting. You have also health officials. So those are, people who are going to need to understand how climate change could affect public health and the spread of disease. And there's also nonprofit advocates and nonprofit consulting groups who need to turn data into science-backed narratives that they can communicate to the public in terms of communicating the implications of climate change. And we actually got to meet with one such nonprofit consulting group in Naples that consults for the Collier County. So that was pretty interesting. Um, So the method we're considering to address these concerns is large language models. So what is a large language model? In an abstract sense, you can think of large language models as a very complicated mathematical function that maps a natural language input to a natural language response. So all it is basically a function that maps some text to some other text. And this is very significant because in this regard, they represent a paradigm shift in the way we interact with software. Because for the first time, now we're actually able to talk to software in plain English, which is our I guess our native modality of communication. Before we kind of had to stoop to the levels of computers in some way to communicate with them by either having to learn to code to do some of these more sophisticated software workflows, or to learn some kind of GUI. So, for instance, there's some very complicated GUIs for GIS softwares that you might need to extract some of the data from these data sets. Um, but as I said, LLMs, they're an alternative to this that has the potential to make software more accessible to normal, like regular people. However, there's a lot of misconceptions about what the actual capabilities of large language models are. So to build a system like this, you have to, have in mind the constraints of LLMs. So namely the fact that LLMs aren't magic. They don't, like I said, all they do is take in some input text and produce some output text. They don't have the ability themselves to trigger any kind of software. They just do this one thing, ignoring for the sake of brevity multimodal models, which can, to some extent, natively interpret like image data, audio data, um, and other modalities, but that's not really relevant to our discussion. So, among the constraints of large language models is the fact that they only know the general patterns and relationships they learn from their training data. And it's worth mentioning as well that their training data typically isn't public information. So you can't take for granted that they have domain adapted knowledge to some specific scientific field. Um, and Another part is, as I mentioned, they can't interact with software natively. They need to be provided with some kind of interface, a text. So that's where the concept of AI agents comes in. And if you've been keeping up with the AI world at all, you've definitely heard about this concept by now. And essentially, you can think of AI agents as a software layer built on top of a large language model that constitutes a collection of interfaces for the LLM that connects it to other software. So that's what's being represented here in the diagram. On the right side here, you have this thing that says, here it's called a service bus. And I guess this is trying to say that the LLM can like book flights and maybe read stock market data, weather data, look at a user database through this bus. This is just the interface that the text-based large language model has to other software services. And then there's some other details here. This is more like the orchestration side of things, but that we don't really need to get into that. So, how do we adapt this concept of a AI agent to the task of communicating scientific data? Well, you have to find a way to connect it to your data. And for that, we propose this four-layer framework for a general science agent. So just to be clear, this is a general blueprint. It's not, specifically isolated to implementations around like water resource data. This can be used for scientific data. This can be used even for just like any kind of structured data, like stock market data, business data. But it's an abstract framework. And then we're going to consider how an implementation of this might actually look for our specific case of groundwater, like hydrology data, and we'll show you the prototype that we built to kind of flesh out this idea and build a working example of this. But in any case, the four layers are starting from the left over here, the translation layer. So that just constitutes the graphical user interface where the user will actually interact with the LLM provided prompts and receive graphics or synthesized responses. Then you have the understanding layer, which is where we address the domain adapted knowledge problem by providing it with an interface to additional documents that it probably wasn't originally trained on so that it can have expert knowledge of whatever scientific domain you're trying to adapt this for. You have the, oops, sorry. You have the access layer, which is the data interface. So that's how, if the understanding layer is for semantic data in terms of like research papers, um, you know, geez, I'm blanking. Research papers, textbooks, things of that nature, scientific literature. Then the access layer is for your actual numerical data. So those are like measurements, geospatial data, statistics. So that would be its interface for your actual numerical data. And then the governance layer, that's very important because if you're building a science agent, you want to make sure that have scientific integrity and that the data you provide is credible and that you can provide the provenance for that data so that people know that it's not hallucination, which is an inevitability when it comes to large language models. They will hallucinate eventually. So you can't have the end user be under the impression that this is some perfect system that they can trust, just where they can just take the responses at face value. They need to be empowered to actually be able to recognize when the model will eventually make mistakes. So, as I mentioned, the best way to test this framework is to actually implement it. And so we implemented it for the specific domain of this regional hydrology model that Dr. Elshall mentioned. So here you can see the four layers represented, but now it includes the specific technologies that we use. And now I'm going to go one by one and basically flesh out some of the details about the technologies that we use for these different layers. And by looking at this, by seeing how an actual AI agent is built, you'll be able to anticipate some of the challenges and some of the considerations that go into the design of an AI system like this, if you're ever in a position to design a system like this. So first of all, let's take a look at the access layer. So this is the part for our agent that's responsible for extracting the geospatial data from these data sets. So what does our data actually look like? Well, this is a kind of data that's called um, it's called a geospatial raster time series, which sounds really complicated. But basically, all it is it's a grid of cells. It doesn't appear very clearly here, but you can imagine that this map here is split up into a grid of cells like this in the X and the Y direction. And then each one of those cells contains a some kind of variable measurement. So it depends what the data set is about. But if it's the surface salinity data set, each one of those cells is going to have some kind of measurement in grams per liter, for instance, or practical salinity units, like for instance 25 grams per liter. This spot here might be 25, this spot here might be 28, that correspond to the measurement at that location. Then to locate that cell in space and time, you need a latitude, a longitude, and time. So there's these three geospatial coordinates. So at the end of the day, once you've put all these together, what you're left with is actually a cube, as opposed to a flat map, because the time dimension brings you into the z-axis. Um, so this is multidimensional geospatial data, and really at the end of the day, it's actually four-dimensional once you take into consideration that again each of these cells has a certain kind of continuous value that corresponds to whatever variable they're measuring, like groundwater depth, temperature, evapotranspiration, any one of those hydrology factors. Um, and also these data sets like NetCDF, for example, they don't just contain the like just raw data. They also are it's a self-describing data format, so it contains metadata attributes that have other information that is necessary to actually interpret what is being represented. So, for example, you need to know the units, so that's contained in the metadata attributes. And you also need to know the kind of map projection that you're using, because whenever you're taking the spherical surface of the Earth and projecting it onto a flat plane like this, there's invariably some kind of warping or stretching. And so there's different ways to go about that. There's different mathematical functions that are used to those ends. So you just need to be able to keep track of those so that at the end of the day, when you actually need to map, each of these cells to an actual location on the Earth's surface, you can you can kind of track exactly how it was stretched and warped, so you can put it back where it belongs, so to speak. Also, I should mention that if anybody has any questions at any point, feel free to just like butt in and we can discuss your question or mention something in the chat. I can't see it, but Dr. Ostral can.
Yeah, I will like, yeah, if I saw anything in the chat, I will let you know. Yeah.
Okay. Um, right. So to extract this data, we needed to provide our agent with a suite of GIS tools, which is basically it's a abstraction of some of the same workflows that a scientist or a GIS engineer might use to make insights from these data sets. And so I'll walk you through just the most relevant set of tools that I think are worth mentioning to give you an idea of how an agent like this would actually go about this process of extracting this data. So first of all, we have the spatial temporal select tool. If you can imagine that the agent is provided with this overall map, this overall data set, to extract the data for a specific region or a specific coordinate, you need to be able to carve out that area of the map. So it needs to have some kind of utility where it can take a subsection of the overall map. So that's the purpose of the spatial temporal select tool. Here you can see these are the exact arguments. This is kind of the AI's view of the tool. It provides these keyword arguments that correspond to some coordinates on the data set. So in this case, like this is for surface salinity data. So the only coordinates, the only dimensions are x, y, and time. So in this case, it's just taking a spatial um, subset. So it's giving you a range of x coordinates. These are UTM meters, not like latitude and longitude, but it's giving a range of x coordinates and y coordinates. And so the result of that operation on the data set is that it's going to be isolated to just this rectangular region corresponding to these coordinates. Reduce dimensions. This tool is necessary basically to eliminate one of the dimensions from the data set. As I mentioned earlier, it's like originally a four-dimensional data set, but as far as the problem of representing the geospatial data graphically, we're limited to the two dimensions that we have to work with on a computer screen because screens obviously maps in the physical world, they're only two-dimensional. So we need to have some kind of method to reduce the other dimensions and flatten the data into two dimensions, but in a meaningful way that actually preserves what was in those reduced axes. So that's the purpose of this reduced dimension tool. You see that the model selects a dimension to reduce and a mathematical method. So that aggregates all of those values so that data is preserved in some way. And you can use different methods for different purposes. Here, it's just using mean, which is, I guess, the most general, the most naive approach for this. You could also use standard deviation, max, min, and pretty much most statistical functions. So this, what you're seeing here is a recipe for making a time series, right? So for a time series data, you need two dimensions, time and the salinity value at each point in time. So that means you have to get rid of the x and the y value. So you can squash it just to a line where each point on the line corresponds to a different salinity value. Okay, filter by value. This one's pretty simple. It just allows you to mask over certain values given some criteria. So here, essentially what this is saying is for the variable of salinity, mask over all the values that don't match this criteria. So what is the criteria? That it has to be greater than 25 grams per liter. And resample time series, this allows you to change the resolution of the time dimension. So for instance, the original data set, for example, for the bisect data is daily averages. So you can change the resolution of that to be instead of from day to day, you can do it from month to month, year to year, etc. So here it's changing it to a monthly frequency, which is useful for manipulating the data if you want to represent it as a different kind of like time series instead of like a graph that's daily. You can show a graph that's monthly, and you can change the statistical function here that you're using. So instead of showing monthly averages, you can show monthly standard deviation or and so forth. And then finally, the last tool of the access layer is the geocoding tool. And this is simply necessary because when an end user uses a system like this, they're not going to know the specific UTM coordinates of the regions that they're trying to um, analyze. They're just going to know, a natural language place name like Miami or Biscayne Bay. So we need to provide the agent with a service where it can resolve those place names to a address and a coordinates that because the obviously that data is stored in the data set in terms of UTM coordinates. So here you can see somebody asked about, oh, I need to know some information about what's going on with the hydrology of Biscayne Bay. So the agent realized that it needs to resolve this to a coordinate, and this is the result of the tool here. You can see it's in UTM, easting and northing. Okay, so now onto the understanding layer. So as I mentioned before, LLMs aren't domain adapted. So to ensure their responses are grounded in credible science, we provided a database of documents that it can query. Right now, it only contains the paper that describes the development and the results of the bisect model. Um, but additional documents can be provided very easily through our RAG pipeline, which I'm going to describe here in a moment. So this is another one of these concepts that you'll definitely be familiar with if you've been around the AI world in any capacity, which is RAG, retrieval augmented generation. And this is the most common way, as far as my anecdotal experience of this, of how agents are provided with additional semantic context beyond just the training data they were trained on. Um, RAG is short for retrieval augmented generation. It's a core part of the AI tech stack, and all it does is it's just an interface. Again, I'm using that word a lot because that's kind of the key concept here. But all it is an interface that lets the agent access a data of documents through a natural language query. So a natural language query is like you can think of it as like a Google search. This is like a Google search bar for the agent, but instead of just exposing it to the internet, it's going to pop up with similarity search result of like a credible curated list of data that you've provided it. So in this case here, the agent decided that it needs to learn something about Biscayne Bay projections from the bisect paper. And so it provided this query. This is like its Google search. And then the result will be the top K um, hits. So it's like you can have the top five, the top 10. There's different considerations that go into that aspect of the design because obviously the more results you give, the more you exhaust your token economy, your token limit. But obviously the more the LM is going to be exposed to perhaps to relevant documents. This is how you get data documents into the vector database. So this is where the LLM is actually extracting um, the documents from this vector database. So you start with some source document, you pass it through a function called a chunking function, which all it does is it splits up a big piece of text into equally sized smaller pieces of text. There's nothing too sophisticated going on there. You have like maybe like if you imagine you have 1,000 word document going in, that might split it up into 100 word chunks, but it's still just regular text at that point. Then you pass each one of those chunks to something called an embedding function, and that's really where the magic happens because it converts each one of those document chunks according to some AI model that maps text to semantically meaningful vectors. So that's just like a mathematical representation of semantic meaning. So in any case, this embedding function converts each of these text documents into a vector embedding, which is a very high dimensional vector, like maybe like a 700 dimensional vector. I think in the case of our embedding model, it's like 786 dimensions or something like that for the Google embedding model. And then simply you need a way to just populate the database with these, and so each of these vector embeddings just becomes a record in the database, and then the API again, that's just your interface for the LLM. So that's where it's actually exposed, and it can actually talk to the database. Right. This is another aspect, I guess, of the understanding there. The tools I mentioned before about the GIS tool suite, that's how it extracts the data, but it doesn't natively have any way to see the data apart from this tool, inspect selection. So here, this gives a profile of the data chunk that it's isolated. So you can see there's all kind of statistics here, and this is you can expand this as much as you want. So this is maybe a very general kind of basic approach here. We're providing just like a range of like um, statistical measurements. You have the maximum value and the minimum value and their coordinates, standard deviation units, and so forth. Um, but in any case, this is the at the end of the day, this tool is the only view that the LLM has of the data. So that's very important. And then the translation layer, how to present the results. So we wanted to provide an interface that's immediately familiar to anybody who's used any of these, chat bots like ChatGPT, Gemini, what have you. So this is this is what our front end looks like. I didn't design this, but basically you have this chat interface here. You have this little window here that's showing the user what the actual extent of the model is. So like you can't ask any questions about Naples, for instance, because that's outside of the domain of the BISEC model. So this is just to kind of remind you of where you're looking at. And then this here that you're seeing is as the active selection, that's the LLM's active view of the data. So this is what it's using those tools to extract, and this is just a profile of the data slice that it's looking at. So dimensions, various coordinates, and so forth. And then finally, the governance layer. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very high stakes situation. Right now, it's just a prototype, but if this were ever if a system like this were ever to be actually implemented for like municipalities and stuff that need to make very critical decisions that are going to have like monetary, even like health implications, then you want to make sure that your system is as credible as possible. Um, and so I just wanted to mention a few points here, which is the fact that I personally find there to be a lack of transparency about the limitations of LLMs in the AI industry. People are very enthusiastic to kind of hype up what their model is capable of because they're trying to sell you something. And I don't want to follow that pattern. And so that brings us to the main point. The main point of failure for our agent and pretty much for the overwhelming majority of LLM-based systems is hallucinations, which again is another concept you would have heard of. This comes from the fact that LLMs have randomness built in inherently into the way they work, into the way they process data through the neural network. Um, and over the long term, hallucinations are guaranteed because of this randomness. So you absolutely, positively must have a way to be transparent about the fact that your AI makes mistakes and that and basically expose it when it does. You can never fully prevent this. This is just something you have to live with if you're going to design an AI system, the reality of hallucinations. But you can design around them to empower the user to recognize them. So the core of our governance pattern is this idea of human on the loop, which is basically it's the fact that through the front end interface, the user is monitoring at all times all the steps that the AI takes to extract this data and to manipulate this data. So if, for example, the AI hallucinates some value, like it says, oh yeah, sure, the average salinity here over this time slice was 32 grams per liter. And then you actually look at the tools the tool calls and you see that it didn't call the spatial temporal select or what have you. Like it did some kind of process where it could not possibly have intuited that number from the actual data it has. Then you can call it out on that and say, hey, I think you messed this up. Um, so that's something that does happen. That's unfortunately just existential limitation of any AI tool. This is what the tool call um, window looks like. So here you're just seeing all the different steps it took. This isn't like the whole list. You would be able to scroll through this, and we'll be able to see this more in depth during the demonstration if we have time. I'm realizing I need to kind of rush to the end. Um, but in any case, here you're seeing the kind of step-by-step process that the agent went through.
So Mike, let me just we only have about 4 minutes left, but actually we would like to continue this and we are recording this. The recording will be like posted after the session, and we will provide you the link. So please, like we are only 4 minutes like left, so please feel free to leave. But we will just continue, yeah, like after like the 2 hours, so Mike will like because that's I think very important and very useful. Like, and I personally like would like to listen to this, yeah, more. So please feel free to leave, and we will continue, and then we will post the recording.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we got like a question from like Sarah. She said, as a non-scientist, non-programmer, Mike, your presentation has been very informative and beneficial. Thank you, Mike and Ahmed, for your time and expertise. You're welcome.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, so you don't really have to rush.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Um, I kind of already explained this already. This is the AI's view. So challenge is the next step. So these are kind of the limitations of our specific prototype, which we're going to address by basically implementing these features. But this is stuff that we haven't actually coded yet. But stuff we're definitely working on right now. So as of right now, the agent is limited to looking at one data set at a time. What I mean by one data set is like one netcdf file at a time. So for instance, in our case, the output of this model is such that each file contains just one variable and one SSP scenario. So that's like an SSP scenario is like it's some kind of like future projection of climate emissions. So for instance, right now unfortunately, you can't make comparisons between different scenarios, which would be very nice because that's kind of basically the whole utility of a system like this is to compare it and contrast different scenarios. Um, so that would be nice, and we're working on implementing that expeditiously. Um, let's see. Another big thing that we need to implement is a benchmark. Um, a benchmark, basically, it's just a test suite that quantifies the agent's accuracy. Um, and that would look like, a set of different prompts, and then maybe the expected output in terms of what the active selection looks like. And then you would just go test case by test case and see, oh, did the agent get a hit? Like, did it extract the data it was supposed to? How about for this prompt? Did it make the right comparison? Did it do the right step of the right sequence of tools and so forth? So you would have like a curated suite of test cases. And then from that, you would be able to extrapolate like some metric, like some accuracy. So that's really important too, because eventually we want to publish this, and you need to have some kind of numbers, I think, in science, you know. Um, Oh, and then another thing is that we would like to have interactive graphics, so you can kind of see this represented here. Like we'd like the user to be able to interact with the map dynamically, and maybe instead of having the agent itself carve out a region of the map, you can have the user select an area. You could also have, for for example, like an interactive time series. So we have like a time series graph functionality now, but it's just limited to whatever time series the agent came up with. But maybe we could have like a bar that can change the time step or the function, the aggregation function. And then finally. This is a big one. The agent is good at finding data from a coordinate. So if I tell you like extract this data from here, make a map overlay of here, like if I give you the here aspect of it, it's really good at finding the data and extracting. What it's not so good at is you give it a criteria. Like find me um the top 10 highest rate of change for groundwater depth in, Broward County, and where it actually has to give you like a list of coordinates. It's pretty much not capable of that at this point. And that's simply because of the fact that we haven't baked that feature into the understanding layer of the inspect selection tool, which is again that's the agent's main view of the data. It just isn't exposed to that, so it can't know. It's not really like seeing the map in the same way that you see it. It's just seeing a statistical summary of it and extrapolating insights from that. So we have to look into a way basically to provide it with a list of important coordinates that that anticipate things that the user might ask, like highest, maybe coordinate with the highest top 10 coordinates with the highest rate of change, with the highest standard deviation, highest average, max, min, what have you. So with that said, let's go to the Q&A and demonstration. So I'm going to pull up the agent here, and we're gonna hopefully ask it a few questions and try to break it. So I'm gonna try to extract some end user testing from you guys if you don't mind. So we can try to see if we can break it. But in any case, if nobody chimes in, I'll just like basically show you a demonstration of different features that I know are pretty robust at this point. So let me pull it up here. Okay. So any takers? Okay, if not, I'll just show you an example of the kind of questions that you can ask it. So I'll show the two main features, which is the time series feature and the heat map feature. Um, so let's say, generate a time series um, representing, um, let's say, um, let's do Miami. Let's say surface salinity in the waters surrounding Miami um, in the year 2098. Now we have to give it a minute or two. We're using a very low cost tier of the Gemini API here, so we don't have as much bandwidth as like ChatGPT and some of those big providers. So let it cook here for a while. It will eventually respond. Right now, it's calling different tools. Okay, there we go. So I have successfully extracted the time series data for surface salinity in the water surrounding Miami for the year 2098. To do this, I located this coordinate. Okay, so this is ostensibly what it received from the geocoding tool and filtered the data set to isolate the daily salinity values, so forth. So here's kind of a statistical summary. This is like a profile of Miami in 2098. Um, these are the different tools it called. So let's see if it did this right. So it looks like it did this right. So it got Miami, it got the don't worry about that. But basically the point is like here you can see it extracted this this point here, which I'm guessing is the exact coordinate of Miami. Um, whatever the geocoding service returned for downtown Miami, I guess whatever address it had saved for that, and then this time slice of 2098. So here's the line chart. Nice. And you can hover over these points and kind of see what this is representing. And then I'll show one more thing just so we don't go too far over time. And I'm going to say like, convert a 10-kilometer range around Miami, let's say around downtown Miami, or let's say Miami Beach to a heat map. So I guess now would be a good time to mention too, because this tends to confuse some people. This is not what these figures that you're seeing are not generative AI in the sense that they were just imagined out of the imagination of an AI. Like you can ask Gemini, like, draw a picture of an elephant, and it's going to using it has some kind of model for converting prompts to images, and it's going to use that model to I guess imagine an elephant and show that to you. But th this isn't coming from the mind of the AI. The AI is just providing it's just providing real validated scientific data to our front end, which is converting that into a graphic. So this is real data. Like at the end of the day, this is credible data. So you can see how our approach is more reliable than just asking ChatGPT like, oh, what's the deal with surface salinity in Miami, where it's actually not backed by any kind of credible source of data, and it might actually just like imagine something and just give you nonsense or whatever nonsense it finds on the first nonsense it finds on the internet. So let's see the heat map. There we go. So you can see, I'm not super fresh on my geography, but I guess is this the Biscayne Bay, Professor?
I don't know. Mocha, can you? I think Mocha might know.
I think this is the Miami River, so you can see how these salinity measurements map roughly over the waterways here. But so I mean that kind of gives you an idea of what a
Okay.
system like this could look like. This is just a prototype, but it shows that a scientific mediator like this is possible, and it's a promising result for us to build upon and keep working on this prototype and for other people to implement in different domains. So that's it.
Yes.
So, to wrap it up, human-centered AI helps people interpret complex water data, understand uncertainty, and decide what to check or do next. AI can flag HAB risk earlier, but uncertainty and false alarms require monitoring and hold up. I'm sorry. An expert review. LLMs make model outputs easier to access, but trusted use requires sources, governance, and human review. So that's basically the big picture of these projects.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Mike, for this like excellent presentation. It was really informative for me, and like I learned a lot from it. Yes, and yeah, finally, I would like yes to acknowledge also our collaborators. So this work, like these two projects, the NSF project and the EPA projects, they have been done in collaboration with multiple also academic partners like FSU and University of Florida, also multiple like federal and state agencies, USGS and the South Florida Water Management District, and so yeah, so like and finally, of course, I would like to acknowledge our funding source, like the EPA for funding this groundwater nature, climate resilience and nature-based infrastructure, and the NSF for funding the health impact of red tide. So with this, I think that brings the end of our presentation, and we are ready to take your questions. Any questions? So I don't see any in the chat, but yeah. So if there is no question, I think we can bring this to an end. So I think we need like some will like might want to stop the recording. Uh, I don't know how can we stop the recording. So yeah.
I see a hand.
Oh, so there's a hand. Yes. So Helen. Yes. So Helen, please. Yes.
Hello. Good
Hi.
morning. Hello, hello, and congratulations for the work and all the topics shown today. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, was very useful for me. I am a teacher about geography and also biological sciences, and I want to mention something. If you are interested, or maybe if you know about the last humanity exam, is about trying to stamp the LLMs. Actually, it was very easy to stamp it using maps, right? Using questions from maps and with some special analysis, right? Now that I've seen your presentation, I see like now it's going to be a little more challenging. Our bar uh, is being kind of increased, right? So I would like to collaborate maybe on a future trials for to trying to use these L last humanity exam. We have a paper published in Nature is being well accepted, but I think there is a huge gap regarding spatial analysis and also human-centered approaches. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Is our contact information somewhere? Can they?
Yes, maybe in the registration, maybe
Yeah.
um, I
I
should. Yes.
I think I
Mhm.
might have it, yes, as in the registration. Yes, I might have the email, the research,
Yes.
yes. So I can, yeah, we can get it.
Yeah. So yeah, please feel free to reach out about that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. I'm gonna send an email.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Do we have any more questions? Uh, so, so I think we can stop the recording, like if someone was, I don't know, like I'm not recording myself, but
I think Sam